Paul Master. What we gotta watch, what we gotta watch, what we gotta watch. Paul Master. What we gotta watch, what we gotta watch, what we gotta watch. Paul Master. What we gotta watch, what we gotta watch, what we gotta watch. Paul Master. What we gotta watch, what we gotta watch, what we gotta watch. Paul Master. What we gotta watch, what we gotta watch. Yeah, buddy, that's right. Get exposure right now. Holler at the homie Paul Mash, man, for Paul Mash TV. Hit up Paul Mash TV across all social media sites, alright? Who we got next?
Well, hello there. It's Paul Mash TV time again. We're glad that you could join us today. I'm your host, Paul Mash, and well, the feedback, it just keeps getting better and better, guys, and we appreciate that. And I just wanted to say on a brief note that yesterday was my birthday. You probably heard that on the Johnny Westwood interview. And so if you all want to wish me a belated happy birthday, you're more than welcome to do that. And we'd like to hear from you on other ways, too. You can do that a number of ways if you're a brand new fan of the show. You can do that by email. That's pmashtv, all one word, at gmail.com. And you can use that not just for fan mail, but you can use it for band or solo artist information on how to be on the show, and we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to go to Facebook and like my page. That's facebook.com/PaulMashTV. And feel free to inbox me there and also join in on the conversations and reply. And we'd love to hear from you there as well. And also, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right there. And you'll keep up with all the latest episodes whenever they become available. So we hope to hear from you then. And we have a closing credit screen. So if you missed any of that, just go to the closing credit screen and all that will be revealed again to you. So we hope to see you then. Right now on Paul Mash TV, in a moment, we got Geirge Finizio from Downey, California. And he's a pretty talented singer, and we've got a lot to talk about on there. So we'll get to that in just a second, but here's another word from ClickJam. Don't go away. Well, hello there. It's Paul Mash TV time again. We're glad that you could join us today. I'm your host, Paul Mash, and well, the feedback, it just keeps getting better and better, guys, and we appreciate that. And I just wanted to say on a brief note that yesterday was my birthday. You probably heard that on the Johnny Westwood interview. And so if you all want to wish me a belated happy birthday, you're more than welcome to do that. And we'd like to hear from you on other ways, too. You can do that a number of ways if you're a brand new fan of the show. You can do that by email. That's pmashtv, all one word, at gmail.com. And you can use that not just for fan mail, but you can use it for band or solo artist information on how to be on the show, and we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to go to Facebook and like my page. That's facebook.com/PaulMashTV. And feel free to inbox me there and also join in on the conversations and reply. And we'd love to hear from you there as well. And also, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right there. And you'll keep up with all the latest episodes whenever they become available. So we hope to hear from you then. And we have a closing credit screen. So if you missed any of that, just go to the closing credit screen and all that will be revealed again to you. So we hope to see you then. Right now on Paul Mash TV, in a moment, we got Geirge Finizio from Downey, California. And he's a pretty talented singer, and we've got a lot to talk about on there. So we'll get to that in just a second, but here's another word from ClickJam. Don't go away.
Whenever it's time to gas up, always keep in mind to dream big and go hard. Log on to clickjam.com and sign up today. And hey, you can always count on us. clickjam.com.
Hello, everybody. It's time for interview time. It's time for interview time here, and we got from Downey, California, we've got Geirge Finizio. Thanks for joining us, Geirge. Excuse me.
Hi. Well, thank you, Paul. And I want to thank you, first of all, for being so patient when we went through a little bit of a crazy period here just a while ago, but you've been a prince of a gentleman about everything, and I sure appreciate it. And also on top of that, thank you for everything you are doing for the indie artists. I think it's wonderful, and you offer a fabulous venue for indie artists to show what they do, and for people to learn a little bit about who they are and what it is they do.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, George. And yes, for those that want to know this at home, we've been struggling with this for a couple months to get him on the show, and he's been doing a song just for the show, as a matter of fact, and he finally got it done today. So that's why we're here now. So I guess,
I have to get a pass out of my cage, Paul.
yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. But first, why don't you just tell me a little bit about why you decided to become a musician? As you know, I ask this question a lot because everybody has their own story. So let's hear your story.
You bet. It's an excellent question for sure. Well, you know, when I was a kid, I loved music, and just wasn't quite sure about a direction regarding music, but I loved listening to the radio, and when I was a kid, a group that really appealed to me a lot, the first group just really caught my ear and my attention span, was the Beach Boys. Fantastic group out of Southern California, which is basically where I grew up and have lived here most of my life. And they were really happening out here. They had just so much fantastic music. And as a kid, I just loved them. And so I listened to their music and got a lot of their albums. And of course, it expanded after that. I got interested in, they had one of these boy band groups, the Monkees, and I didn't realize at the time they were kind of they had a lot of great music. And then got interested in the Beatles. The Beatles came along, and they were kind of like a big steamroller all over the world, not necessarily to Southern California. But then even after that, I got interested in groups like the Cream, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page. A lot of the guitar gods, got very, very much interested in that, and was kind of hoping to be the next Eric Clapton for a while. But then also, when I got my 20s, I got really interested in the keyboards and studied classical music, but also pulled out like a lot of Zombie records and Rod Argent. Big fan of Rod Argent and a lot of the other fantastic keyboard players that I've had the pleasure to listen to over the years. Keith Emerson, Rick Wakeman, just to name a few. And I also had a lot of classical training, some classical training, a couple of years. And then there was an artist that, a teacher that I studied, two teachers actually. One was a classical teacher, and another one that I was very fortunate. He actually did piano bars for about 40 years, and I was very lucky to get some fantastic training through him. His name was Ken Berry, and my classical teacher was Russell Baldwin. Both fabulous teachers, and I was very lucky to get training from both of them. I learned a lot from both of them, and then kind of incorporated that into what I do, and a lot of it's self-taught also. So those were a lot of my music backgrounds. Big fan of the Moody Blues here too. I've been a huge fan of that group for a long time and still am to this day.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned the Monkees a little bit ago. I remember growing up with that group when I was a kid. Of course, it had already been passed by that time, but I used to watch the reruns of that, and it's just too bad Peter and Davey are no longer with us, but Mike and Mickey are still there, though. But they were probably one of my favorite bands, I guess. Would you say some of those bands that were kind of like influenced? Would you say some of those bands you mentioned are big influences on you? I guess you mentioned a few bands there.
Absolutely, Paul. They all are. Every one of them was a big influence. And I kind of came to a crossroads at one point because one of the things that happened was my dad tried really hard to discourage me from getting into music. And it's a very tough career. And I was lucky I was able to make a career out of it for, about 30 years, working at restaurants, hotels. But then, you have to kind of make a choice when you get to a certain point, because you get to a point in life where you have to say, well, you got to make a living after a while. And I wanted to do that with music. So I worked really hard to work playing restaurants, hotels, and I was very fortunate because I worked a lot of really quality ones. But that's quite a job too. But I was also interested in original music, so I spread myself out in a whole bunch of ways. But for a long time, the priority was working and working steady, which I did. I was very lucky that there were a lot of restaurants that I was able to work at for quite some time. And but then also started getting more into original music, and with the CD that I came out, the Something That Is Deep Inside, and also working on other original songs. One of the things though about working restaurants and hotels though is that you're almost 100% expected to play cover music from other groups that are well known or that are popular numbers. And that really did a lot to broaden my horizons too, because I had to learn like a lot of show tunes, some classical music. I would work off requests, and you never know what people are going to throw at you. And it's really impossible to learn all the music. I had a classical teacher, Russell Baldwin, tell me, and this was like in the early 70s when I was studying with him. He said, if you took all the music, this was about like 1970 or 71, he said this. If you took all the music, all the classical music that had ever been written, or what was it? What was the comment he said? If you tried to, now I'm going brain dead here. Now, now that I need to come, you could never play all the classical music that was ever. Yeah, all the classical music, just up to that point in 1970, and of course that doesn't include the classical music that had they don't hear that much of, that maybe wasn't the high quality stuff like the Mozart or the Beethoven or the Brahms, the Bach. But he said you could never, if you played from the time you were born till the time you died, you could not play all the classical music that was ever written. Now that's just the classical music. That doesn't include any of the other styles, pop, rock, jazz, country. So, if you can't play all the classical music in a lifetime, you stand no chance of being able to do all the other music or any of the other, a lot of the other music. And so one of the things that was helpful after a while was that I'd get a pretty good idea of what people would want to hear. And of course, they'd still have requests and things I wouldn't know, but I'd make a list, and then the ones that came up quite a bit, I made a point of learning. And that was pretty popular with the customers because they did come back and they did appreciate the fact that it took time and effort to accommodate their requests.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we get into your albums now? I know you've had several albums, I think, in the past. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, there's the primary one that I have out or have been focusing on has been the first one, which is Something That Is Deep Inside. I still need to get that out a little more. And fortunately, it's been very well received. Actually, every track on there has gotten radio airplay, every single track. There are like 2 Christmas songs that a friend of mine, Gary Frisbee, and I put together. The song's called It Must Be Christmas, and then also I Remember Christmas, which was Gary's song. And fortunately, that was really well received around the holidays. Gary and I put together a song in the studio called It's Over Now, and we did all the work to that. I did the mixing and mastering, basically, which is a pretty tough part of the process. But, you know, we also recorded all the parts and did everything. Another gentleman that I had really great pleasure and good fortune to bump into was a gentleman that I was working in a band in the early 70s with, and his name is John Jorgensen. And very, very well-known musician and well-deserved. A phenomenal musician with just phenomenal music skills and innate abilities. Incredibly talented. And so we worked together in the studio for a while, and a couple of my songs were put together there. And John, just incredible. His instincts are remarkable, and phenomenal guitarist. Some of them I put together myself as well, as far as like Professor of the Blues. That's the one I totally did myself. I did all the instrumental parts, mixing, mastering. And then there are other songs as well where, you know, I collaborated with either Gary or John. But there are others that are on the way also. So I got my fingers in a whole bunch of different projects right now. And hopefully I'll get a number of those done and move on to some of the other things I've been meaning to do for quite some time.
Okay, and you can get some of that stuff on anywhere, like not just digital format, but you can get it on regular format too, or is it just digital format?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and let's see, Amazon. How could I possibly forget Amazon? So for the most, and CD Baby, I cannot forget CD Baby, because when the early part of the indie movement started, Derek Sivers, who was the owner of CD Baby, was one of the gentlemen who did a lot of the pioneering as far as opening the doors for musicians. There was a time I remember when he mentioned at one of the meetings, and I used to go to some of the CD Baby member meetings, he said that iTunes had approached him about issuing the CD Baby member catalog on iTunes. So this really opened up a lot of doors to where a lot of independent musicians could get a lot of their music heard worldwide. And I remember that happened ballpark 15 years ago or something like that. But Derek did an awful lot to pioneer. Derek sold the company.
Mm-hmm.
But he did an awful lot to take the indie artists forward. So some things that a lot of indie artists take for granted now.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Well, we're getting ready to play that song in just a moment ago, and you mentioned the name of the song, "The Professor of the Blues." Is there a story behind that song, or maybe you could tell us a little bit about that?
Well, a lot of my background, especially when I was young or younger, there was a huge blues influence, and from Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, a lot of what you might call the guitar gods of like the 60s and early 70s. They were very prominent and very popular at that time. And I also listened to B.B. King, some Albert King. A lot of the John Mayall was a huge influence, especially when I was a kid. I listened to a lot of their albums. And we would take a lot of the albums and just listen to the guitar licks and play them over and over. But Ray Charles interviewed, and he said, well, the blues is kind of like when, you know, your wife doesn't like you, your dog doesn't like you, nothing's going right. That's kind of the blues. So I was thinking, you know, you get into that kind of doldrum and you just keep having that thing happen over and over, then you feel like you're a professor of the blues, you know, to where you're so learned in the condition that you're kind of tired of it and sick of it. So I wrote a song about it.
Mm. Oh, okay. Well, that's true. What you said there about the blues, I mean, it's just about anything can be if you look at it in one way or shape or form. So, um, so we're going to look at that, as I said, in a moment. But I just want to thank you, George, for coming on the show, and we appreciate you coming on. We'd love to have you back sometime.
I'd love to do it, Paul. It'd be a pleasure and an honor, as it is now. And I thank you, and I want to thank you once again for number one, honoring me and being such a fantastic resource, not only for myself, but a lot of the other indie artists as well. And I would strongly encourage them to look you up and to take advantage of the wonderful opportunity that you're allowing indie artists. I think it's fantastic what you do, and thank you so very much.
Yeah, no problem. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I hope to do it for even longer. And if anybody out there, like I said, wants to be on the show, like I said, stay tuned for the closing credits. I got all the info right there you need. So we're going to play that song now. Here's Geirge Finizio with I'm sorry, I forgot the name.
The Professor of the Blues.
Professor of the Blues, right. So here it is. Right now on Paul Mash TV. Don't go away.
Day in my life's another day in school. After all this time I've learned one rule, I get it. Won't tell it and abuse. I try hard not to lose, all but I've learned the news. I'm the professor of the blues. I try to do right, it only turns out wrong. It only makes me here just to sing this song. I get used. Won't tell it and abuse. I try hard not to lose, all but I've learned the news. I'm the professor of the blues. Every day I get up just to be let down. I try to wear a smile, but it turns into a frown. I get used. Won't tell it and abuse. I try hard not to lose, all but I've learned the news. I'm the professor of the blues. I try to go on, I want to be set free, but the same old thing keeps on happening to me. I get used. Won't tell it and abuse. I try hard not to lose, all but I've learned the news. I'm the professor of the blues. You know I've tried so hard just to shed this name. I've learned to believe everything will be the same. I get used. Won't tell it and abuse. I try hard not to lose, all but I've learned the news. I'm the professor of the blues. I'm the professor of the blues. Yeah, the professor of the blues. I'm the professor of the blues.